Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name's Alicia Vaz, and I work as an account manager in the architecture, engineering, and construction practice. And today, I am delighted to be back as your host for Esri UK's second instalment of the ArcGIS Update for summer 2023. Now, over the next hour, we will be covering all the latest and greatest updates to make its way through to the ArcGIS system this quarter, to give you a view of what's new, but most importantly, help you and your organisation to start to plan for the future. Now, alongside me today, I am joined by a stellar lineup of presenters, including our newly appointed Chief Technical Officer, Mark Wells, our Enterprise Services Consultant, Amy Palmer, and three of our incredible GIS consultants, Eve Selby, Liv Mitchell, and Claudia Hodgson. So thank you, team, for joining me this morning. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you have in store for us today. But before we get started, let's kick things off with a little bit of housekeeping. So today's webinar is going to be recorded, so if you do need to step away at any point, please do not fear. A copy of the recording alongside the slide deck and all the useful resources that we reference today will be circulated in a follow-up email. Because today's session is jam-packed with all the good bits, we will not be taking a live Q&A. However, we will be capturing questions and feedback on Slido. Now, to get started with Slido, you can either navigate to the website or scan the QR code on screen, and you'll need to enter in event code 1807 to get started. Please make sure that you log and upvote any questions that you might have over the next hour, and post-webinar, we will try to get back to as many of those questions as possible. Near the end of the webinar, it's also worth mentioning that the poll section will go live. In there, there'll be an opportunity for you to submit your feedback to us, tell us what you thought of today's webinar, but also what you'd like to hear about next. So please make sure you keep those questions coming, but the Slido section will be live throughout the whole of today's webinar. So on to today's agenda, we're going to kick things off with the headline news, a few short, sharp and sweet updates to be aware of this quarter. We'll then hear from Mark, who's going to tell us his key takeaways from the user conference, before jumping into some of the key updates, including what's new in Enterprise 11.1, what's new in mobile apps, and of course, getting to know ArcGIS Experience Builder. So with that, let's kick things off with the headline news. And first up, we have a product announcement. So as of the June release of ArcGIS Online, Map Viewer Classic, ArcGIS Configurable Apps, and ArcGIS Story Maps Classic have been deprecated. If you have been using these solutions, then any of your older existing content will continue to exist in your ArcGIS Online environment, but moving forward, you will need to migrate across to use one of these three new applications. Of course, with the summer release, we've had a lot of new features and functionality to make its way through to ArcGIS Online. There's lots to get through, but today we're just going to focus in on some of the latest updates to the applications. So first, we have what's new with Map Viewer. In this release of Map Viewer, we've added in 10 new tools. A good proportion of those tools have moved across from Map Viewer Classic, but we have seen the addition of hydrological tools, including the fill or flow direction. In the Map Viewer, you'll also now be able to filter your data before you add it to the map view. So if you're working with catalogues of data from the Living Atlas, for example, you could filter the data based on region and category to ensure the data is fit for purpose before you start working with it on your map. Map Viewer now also supports multi-dimensional data sliders. So gone are the days where you can just enable a data slider on just a time and a date stamp. You can now go above and beyond this And in the example you can see on the screen, using sea level temperatures, we can filter on velocity, of course, the date and the timestamp, but also the Z or the height value in the data as well, giving us this new window into our data. And finally, when it comes to Map Viewer, it now directly supports SVG symbology, making sure your logos and symbols are crisper than ever. So for Map Viewer, we can then turn our attention to instant apps. As of the June release, the public notification template is now out of beta. So if you're interested in adding in a buffer and exporting out data in that buffer as either a CSV or a PDF, then this template could be for you. Again, it's a really popular use case in the government sector. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at this template, please take a look at it post-webinar. We've also introduced a new beta in the form of the Observer template. It's designed to work with 3D data if you're keen to pull through some of the key statistics from your models, but also have some of the basic interrogation tools, then this is a really nice template to frame your dataset. There have been additions such as the Atlas beta, but also updates to existing plan templates, including insets and exhibit. So if you want to learn more about that, please take a look at the online help. And finally, behind the scenes, we have been making accessibility improvements in the format of the sidebar, homepage, and the config settings to try and make sure that our technology is applicable and, most importantly, accessible to everybody. Then we turn our attention to Experience Builder, and as of this release, we've seen the addition of 3 brand new widgets in the form of the base map gallery, Swipe, which allows you to compare and contrast data, and the addition of Near Me in beta. Fun fact, Near Me merges together 5 widgets from Web App Builder in Experience Builder, but more to come on this in just a little bit. And then we can take a look at dashboards. So as of the June release, dashboards now support author mobile views. So if you are thinking about using your dashboard on either a mobile phone or a tablet, this is a really great way to make sure you're optimizing the screen space, but also that your key performance indicators are pulling through correctly. For the map in dashboards, we now support Find My Location and a compass tool. We've been making accessibility improvements in the background, and we have simplified the map selection. Now, one of my personal favourite updates to make its way through to this release is the addition of the data pipelines functionality, which is now in beta. If you are considering ingesting data from a variety of different formats, you want to manipulate and analyze that data and then export it onto your map as a feature layer, then this functionality could be for you. Consider it the model builder, but for a web-based environment. Now, before you get started, it is worthwhile reading up about this new capability because when and if you start to use it, it will consume credits per hour. So a great new tool set, but please make sure you have a look at the documentation before you get started. So next up, we'll turn our attention to content and focus in on the Living Atlas. In June, we added in the 3D topographic base map, which is currently in beta. The base map has global coverage and it is based on OpenStreetMap daylight. It includes everything from building footprints to trees and even places. If you are trying to get started with your 3D story, perhaps work in the planning or design space, then this could be a really valuable data set for you. In the same vein, we've also added in a brand new deep learning package in the form of Segment Anything model. It does what it says on the tin and allows you to segment your data. So you can identify different land use types, water bodies, building footprints, or even the outline of planes. And in an era when we're considering how we can be smarter and more efficient and adopt digital approaches, deep learning packages like this can really help us to progress. When we're talking about content, it's also important to touch on addressing. Those of you who are familiar with Locator Hub will know that it is retiring at the end of this year. If you're still trying to get your head around that, then there's a whole variety of webinars, blogs, and FAQ documents to help you with the migration process. The key thing to bear in mind is that the replacement will be UK Data Loader. We're currently running at version 7.1, and we are set to release another version at the end of this year. There's a number of minimum requirements to be aware of, but if you do have a specific question, then please either get in touch with our addressing team using the alias on screen, or reach out to your account manager and we would be happy to help you get to the bottom of your query. And then finally, in terms of the headline news, I just want to wrap things up with a whole host of videos off the back of our annual conference this May. So if you are keen to hear a little bit more about the technology, how it's advancing, and how customers are using that technology in their business, then the recordings from the conference are now live on our website. So you simply need to navigate to the homepage, go to About, Events, Past Events, Annual Conference, and you'll find them all listed there under the Presentations tab. So that's it for the headline news this quarter. And with that, I'd now like to hand you over to our newly appointed CTO, Mark, who's going to take us through his key takeaways from the user conference.
That's great. Thanks, Alicia. And good morning, everybody. It's great to be here with you. So as Alicia said, I spent last week at our International User Conference in San Diego, and there were about 19,000 of us who descended on the city. And I tell you, you get a really great sense of the scale and the passion of our community when you're together in that place and in that room. It's quite humbling, and it's certainly inspiring to see the breadth of the application of GIS and the amazing work that you do and that we all do around the world. And it was just a great week learning and celebrating that together. And so, as Alicia said, what I thought I would do today is share some of my key takeaways, my main reflections on the themes of spending that week immersed in that community. And so the first one for me is the growth in the demand and desire for software as a service. So there was a time not many years ago where there was really a predominant desire for on-premises systems. Many organizations that I worked with around that time wanted to keep data on premises, run systems themselves. In fact, we at Esri UK were very similar, but I'd say over the last 5+ years, we, like many organizations, have adopted cloud-first approaches for resilience, for simplicity, for cost benefits that can bring. And I think that's not really news. Lots of us have been on that journey, and I hope that story is familiar to lots of people today. But I think what's interesting for me and what is beginning to crystallize is, and what I saw coming through last week is this change from a broad desire for cloud first to a more specific desire for SaaS first. And that might sound subtle, but I think it's important. It's the difference between deploying lots of single tenant cloud hosted bespoke systems to embracing the same types of capabilities through multi-tenant, highly scalable on-demand systems. And in our world, we're talking about ArcGIS Online. You know, we're seeing more demand for ArcGIS Online than ever before. This year, it's growing at the rate of about 20 to 30%. And, you know, we're seeing it increasingly recognized as the enterprise system that it is. It's providing core GIS capabilities with the benefit of scalability, of stability, of cost. And I also think it can help to address some aspects of sustainability as well. You know, as organizations are increasingly conscious, and rightly so, of the carbon impact of all of our operations, SaaS in many cases can help us to operate more efficiently as we pool resources in one system with global provision, which can help reduce latent CPU cycles and idle time and so on. So that's my number one. That's my number one takeaway: the growth and demand and desire for SaaS, and the slight change, or the slight shift that I'm beginning to see away from just cloud first to SaaS first. The second thing is about delivering enterprise GIS, and clearly it's closely related to lots of the things I've just spoken about. Software as a service is a key part of delivering enterprise GIS. ArcGIS Online and all of its extensions, things like ArcGIS Image for managing imagery, ArcGIS Velocity for real-time site scan for reality capture, and so on. These are all part of the enterprise delivery of GIS. But there's still a broad need for ArcGIS Enterprise in this space, which today is typically deployed in cloud environments. In fact, Amy is going to be speaking to us next. She is one of our experts at doing this, at deploying these systems. And then those systems can either be managed by your organization, or we can manage it for you here at Esri UK as a managed cloud service. Now, let's just zoom out from this whole area for a moment. We at Esri, we're working towards a position, still a number of years away, but we're working towards a position where we have all of our capabilities available as SaaS. And at that point, it becomes a choice of how you deploy and access them. But today, ArcGIS Online isn't in that space yet. It represents a subset of all of the capabilities that you can get access to. And so ArcGIS Enterprise gives you access to some of these wider capabilities. And what we're seeing here is a real focus on the enterprise nature of these systems. How do we deliver enterprise GIS in 2023? These are powerful systems. They can be complex to deploy and to manage. The integration with wider IT is really important. The ability to keep these systems secure, to keep them updated. In many, many cases, ArcGIS Enterprise is supplying critical operational functionality to your organizations on a day-to-day basis. So I see this really as essential work. And one approach that's starting to gain a lot of traction is the deployment of ArcGIS Enterprise on Kubernetes. And that came through for me really strongly last week. Kubernetes is a cloud-native approach which takes advantage of containerization and microservices. It's really worth looking at if you already have Kubernetes skills within your organization. In a traditional sense, you wouldn't go and ask your IT team to run ArcGIS Enterprise on Windows or Linux unless they had the skills in those operating systems in running those environments. And Kubernetes is no different. It's a cloud-native operating system. You need to have the core skills to do that before you start down that route. So that really is the key starting point. But it does give you lots of cloud-native benefits, such as auto-scaling, DevOps integration. And a big one for me is the ability to upgrade in situ without downtime, the ability to keep your system patched, operational, secure, upgraded, evergreen. All of that is something that ArcGIS Online as SaaS gives us naturally 3 times a year. We see updates in ArcGIS Online. In fact, many of us probably don't even notice that those things have happened, and we just carry on working. But that can be a really challenging approach in our traditional ArcGIS Enterprise management, where we've got to manage that downtime, perform those upgrades, keep those systems secure. And Kubernetes can really help us do that without some of those historical challenges. So that's my second point, is around the delivery of enterprise GIS. The third one is about the nature of professional GIS and how that's changing. One of the things I get asked from time to time is, when am I going to see ArcGIS Pro in a browser? And my answer for the last few years, at least, is, that is already happening. It is the journey that we're on. And if you look at some of the core things that you do as a GIS professional today, you create authoritative maps and content, you perform spatial analysis, you share your work with a wider audience. What I mean is, 10 years ago, you only had access to desktop tools to do all of these things. You couldn't do it in any other way. So when I say we're on this journey, what I mean is that the landscape today is very different. Even with things like data collection, field work used to be only really viable on a dedicated ruggedized device that was often then synced back with the desktop. The landscape that we have today is very different. What comes through at the user conference is actually, we have this beautifully rich ecosystem of applications, of tools, of approaches for doing GIS. No longer is it all constrained into the desktop, but it's about making it available in different ways, making it more accessible to wider groups of people, lowering the barrier for entry and providing choice and options. And actually, sometimes at Esri UK, I think we get too close to this. We're working closely, hand in glove with customer projects and helping customers achieve their business objectives. And sometimes we need to step back actually and look at the system that we have because it's incredibly powerful. And it's been an active choice for us at Esri to develop it like this. It's no accident. We've deliberately developed this way of working, and we continue to do that. So ArcGIS Pro, our professional desktop application, is really a very important tool in this toolbox, in our suite of applications to use. It's our GIS and data science workstation. I think we're going to see the need for desktop tools for years and decades to come. But there are 2 things here. The first is, if you're a GIS professional, you might no longer do all of your work in Pro. You might use a variety of tools and approaches to accomplish it, which is more efficient, allows you to take advantage of some of these better ways of working. And the second point is, it's almost a paradox. These new approaches help us to simplify access and make GIS accessible to wider groups of people. That might actually mean, as a highly skilled GIS professional, you can actually focus on some of the tricky stuff. That might mean you spend more of your time in Pro, but it also means you're no longer driving everything from one workstation. You can cultivate this ecosystem of engagement that draws in more people, exposes them to your work, and helps play to different people's strengths. So desktop tools are here to stay, but the nature of how we work as GIS professionals is no longer constrained to desktop clients. It hasn't been for some time, and it's becoming accessible in other ways, and I expect that to continue to grow. And then lastly, ArcGIS is a platform for developers. Again, a really key theme that came through for me. In San Diego last week, there was actually a whole day dedicated to developers. And really what comes across is that while we've got this incredible system with software, tools, and applications to support your work, everything that we have is also accessible via an API. When you put data into ArcGIS Online or you put data into ArcGIS Enterprise, it generates an API for you to access it. It's actually how all of our own software works and integrates and interoperates. It uses the same API, and then we make that API available to you in a secure way to build applications of your own. And in fact, many organizations today only operate via that route. They use ArcGIS Platform to do that. They build their own apps using these approaches. So my time is nearly gone. They're the 4 themes that I really wanted to draw out for you from the user conference last week. The first is about the growth in the demand and the desire for SaaS and the subtle shift from cloud first more towards SaaS first. That's one thing that I think we're seeing. The second is about delivering enterprise GIS, the role of SaaS within that, but also the role of ArcGIS Enterprise and increasingly cloud native approaches. The changing nature of professional GIS, embracing a wider ecosystem of tools and approaches to do that. And then finally, the platform for developers and the ability to build your own apps and access everything via an API. So they're my 4 themes. That's my whistle-stop tour of San Diego. Alicia, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, there's a lot to get through there, isn't there? But the system is coming on leaps and bounds, and it's incredible just to see the power tools that are coming to some of those end clients in the web-based, SaaS-based environment. So incredible insight. Thank you, Mark. So just a quick reminder, if you haven't already, if you've got questions, please make sure you log them on Slido. Just a quick update, the code you will need to get started is ESRI 1807. I can see some questions coming through, but please keep them coming. And without further ado, I'm now going to hand it over to Amy, who's going to tell us more about what's new with Enterprise at 11.1.
Thank you, Alicia. So, hi all, my name is Amy Palmer, and I work as an Enterprise Services Consultant for ESRI UK. I'm here today at this ArcGIS update to present a brief talk about what's new in ArcGIS Enterprise version 11.1. So, ArcGIS Enterprise is the foundational software system for GIS, powering mapping and visualization, analytics, and data management. It is the backbone for running the ESRI suite of applications and your own custom applications too. It is highly integrated with ArcGIS Pro for mapping and authoring and seamlessly connects with ArcGIS Online as well to share content between systems. ArcGIS Enterprise gives you complete control over your deployment. It can be run on Microsoft Windows, Linux, and Kubernetes, and it supports single, small machine deployments as well as larger multi-machine deployments too. So in April 2023, ArcGIS Enterprise 11.1 was released, following on from version 11 that was previously released in July 2022. This latest version is a long-term support release that is now available to all of you, and I'm going to touch upon a few of the key features at this version across the ArcGIS Enterprise components, including ArcGIS Portal, content and data management, and administration. Just before I cover these new features, I'd like to note that ESRI recommends to review the considerations if you're planning to upgrade your existing ArcGIS Enterprise to version 11.1, as there are a number of changes from version 11 onwards. A major change is the removal of the ArcMap-based runtime, meaning that you will now not be able to publish services to Enterprise 11 using ArcMap. It's important to review these services ahead of time, and there are tools available in ArcGIS Enterprise 10.9.1 to help you migrate these services to the ArcGIS Pro runtime. Furthermore, GP services written in Python 2.x will need to be updated to Python version 3, and there are also tools available to help you with this. For users of the portal, likely the biggest impact of upgrading to 11.1 is going to be the retirement of a number of applications. These include classic dashboards, classic story maps, raster base maps, and retired configurable app templates. Windows Server 2012 is also no longer supported. And if you're on an older version of ArcGIS Enterprise using Windows Server 2012, you will not be able to upgrade directly to this new version. There are also new system requirements for ArcGIS Web Adapter at version 11.1, and these include Microsoft Web Deploy 3.6, and also the ASP.NET Core Runtime, Windows Hosting Bundle 6.x, and these two components will need to be installed on the machine where your ArcGIS Web Adapter is located. I would recommend reviewing the Esri resources further to see these changes in more detail and carry out an upgrade to 11.1 when you're ready. So let's talk about some of the new features then. Organization level webhooks were previously introduced to ArcGIS Enterprise to assist administrators responding to certain organization management tasks. At the version 11.1 release, service webhooks are now available for hosted and reference feature services, as well as asynchronous geoprocessing services. For feature services, webhooks can be triggered on the create, read, update, and delete operations. For GP services, webhooks can configure an on-the-job status of a service. All ArcGIS Enterprise webhooks follow a similar process. Once the webhook is triggered, event information is delivered in a JSON schema containing relevant information specific to each webhook type. With the information delivered, the receiver platform can perform a specific action that notifies organization members and administrators of the event. So depending on the needs of your organization, this could be designed to send emails to specified members or messaging administrators when features have been edited. ArcGIS Enterprise 11.1 includes the ability to configure custom data feeds. At the moment, you're probably organizing your data within file geodatabases, enterprise geodatabases, and using supported formats to work within Enterprise. At 11.1, custom data feeds can now be configured to process and serve a read-only feature service within ArcGIS Enterprise on Windows. There are two environments to consider when configuring custom data feeds: a developer environment and a server environment. Once your environments have been configured, you can create your feature services by creating a custom data provider, deploying this provider, creating a feature service, and then consuming this service when it shows up in your portal content. This is just like any other read-only feature service, and you can use this service in the client of your choice. You won't be able to carry out analysis on the service, and the service does need to be running, but you can customize the symbology and view its features. Next, I'd like to talk about Map Viewer updates in the portal for ArcGIS. Map Viewer has now inherited further ArcGIS Online updates made late last year. Users working with layers that contain many features will now be able to customize feature aggregation within Map Viewer. Clustering has been enhanced to enable the styling of non-clustered symbols, while also supporting clustering and projection symbols other than WGS 1984. Binning is a new type of aggregation using polygons of equal area and size to represent your data, and you can now also use pie charts to visualize data in tables and layers. Heat maps can now also be configured with harder and softer edges, and their areas of influence can be adjusted to be larger or smaller too. The ability to add GeoJSON files as hosted feature layers directly in your enterprise portal is now available at 11.1. GeoJSON is an open standard geospatial data interchange format that represents simple geographic features and their non-spatial attributes. This capability makes GeoJSON data more accessible in ArcGIS Enterprise, enabling you to manipulate the data with similar functions as a hosted feature layer. GeoJSON supports point, line, polygon, and multi-part feature and geometry types. So my last key highlight on what's new in ArcGIS Enterprise is ArcGIS Enterprise on Kubernetes version 11.1. In May, this was released on Windows and Linux, and as Mark mentioned, it can run on your environment and take advantage of cloud-native software to deliver built-in high availability and scalability, whilst making things easier for administrators. Beneath the surface, ArcGIS Enterprise on Kubernetes has a completely new architecture to transform your GIS at version 11.1. However, you will still retain the same familiar experience whilst creating maps and apps, performing analysis, and collaborating. At 11.1, there is the new ArcGIS image services on Kubernetes, allowing you to manage processes and serve collections of imagery as image services directly within your existing Kubernetes deployment. There have also been enhancements to ArcGIS Enterprise Manager, giving you a central, simple view of the software and providing the user interface to scale services, configure security and backups, perform upgrades and updates. So there is lots to get excited about in the new ArcGIS Enterprise 11.1, and I've only been able to touch upon a couple of my top highlights. For a full list of everything that's included with this release, you can have a look further at the What's New in ArcGIS Enterprise Esri blog pages and help guides online. Thank you all for listening, and back to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Amy. Great stuff. There's definitely a number of considerations, I think, for jumping up to version 11.1. So if you are on that path, you're looking to upgrade, please do keep the questions coming to us and tell us, where you need support. So next up, I'm going to hand things over to Eve, who's going to tell us more about mobile apps.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alicia. So we are going to be talking about 3 different mobile applications and the features that are new in each of them. Starting with field maps, then quick capture, and finally survey 123. So in field maps, this is our all-in-one application for helping mobile workers perform data collection and editing with some real-time options. And the first thing to note is that support for Windows 11 is now available. There are some device requirements, which includes fulfillments for RAM and processors, along with having the correct subsystem, but with that, then you are all sorted. Next up is collection settings. So collection settings have been introduced within this June update for Field Maps Designer to improve your location capture quality, including warning when the GPS fixed type threshold isn't met. And if you're wondering what a fixed type is, it's the signal that's used by the GPS receiver, like your phone, to determine its location. This could be influenced by factors like the number of satellites that are visible or the GPS receiver that's being used. So, for example, if you have one fixed type that's been set, but then a less precise fixed type is what's being used at the time of capture, you'd see a message that looks like this. The next collection setting feature is for manual location, which is when a mobile worker would add or update a point value without snapping it to an existing feature. And while this is great for rapid data capture, it can introduce unwarranted inaccuracy. And so to help maintain standards, this map setting can warn or block mobile workers from manually placing locations. If this was set up, then a pop-up like this could be in place. Or that's what it would look like if I were in charge of UX. But in actuality, you'd receive a notification that looks like this. The final addition to this June update in Field Maps comes from the Arcade editor within Field Maps Designer. It is now introduced within geofencing, so you can use it to trigger location alerts or location sharing. These photos would show how you'd be able to use Arcade to create a pop-up message which alerts a user that they've entered a restricted area during after hours instead of business hours. And while this is available in ArcGIS Online currently, there are planned future releases for ArcGIS Enterprise. Now that we've talked a little bit about what's been covered in field maps, I just wanted to highlight that if you're ever interested in testing out these capabilities, then you're more than welcome to do so through our early adopter program. And now moving on to ArcGIS Quick Capture, which is our big button application for rapid data collection. With the May update, we have had an introduction to video capture, which now allows users to connect video to observations that they collect up to 10 seconds. This could be useful for reporting any issues or documenting any damage. And these are all stored in your ArcGIS as attachments, with an additional field within feature layers. There has also been app linking, which allows your quick capture application to link to other apps remotely. You could use this to connect your quick capture project to launch another Esri application, a pop-up, hyperlink, or even an email or website. And again, These are what we've chatted about, and I highly recommend looking into our early adopter program. But then the majority of our updates for mobile apps have come from Survey 123, which is our form-centric application. With the June release, there have been quite a few capabilities introduced to Web Designer, which is our platform for online survey configuration. This includes introducing the new question type, which is for slider. It is great for continuous data, such as if you're inputting something for pH or temperature. There is also now the ability to use a populated drop-down lists from an ArcGIS layer. This was an incredibly popular feature that was available in Connect, which is our desktop application, but it's now been brought into Web Designer to make it even easier to maintain survey lists, as well as being able to dynamically filter choices. And then there is now also the ability to use URL redirects after a survey submission, which allows for a seamless transition to take users to another website. And then moving on to our mobile side of things for Survey 123, location sharing is now available within the mobile app, so you can monitor the last known location of Survey 123 users, including where they've been. And it is the final of these three applications to support this location sharing capability. It should be noted that you need to set this up in advance by an administration within the Survey 123 website, and in order to use this capability, you do need the active location sharing license. There's also been improvements to our barcode scanner, which could be useful for auto-populating a form by scanning a code. And then we now also have a rangefinder support in beta, which combines Survey 123 with rangefinders to measure distance, spans, heights, clearances, and slopes quickly and accurately. It has applications in forestry or utilities and public works. And then one of the pieces that I found most interesting with this mobile update is there is now a smart assistant available within your Survey 123 mobile app to help you leverage AI in the field. You could use this to auto-classify images, object detection, even redact information from images taken using the Survey 123 camera. And though it is nothing quite as scary as the Space Odyssey robot that you might have playing in your mind's eye, it is a lot more useful to your data collection workflow. And so if you're interested in configuring something for object classification, you'd be able to take a pre-trained package and then set it up within Connect. And you could use it for a workflow on IDing road signs, such as what we have on the screen at the moment for speed versus stop signs. But you could also use this for face redaction as well. And while you can use it automatically, you can also go in manually and then adjust these redactions as needed, whether it's adding new images, removing or editing existing ones, all as you see fit. And while this could require you to train deep learning packages to better suit your workflows, you can also access the deep learning packages available within our data library in the ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World. And then again, this is an example of what it might look like within Connect, which is our desktop application. And it is important to note that while this is an incredibly useful and powerful tool, they do not replace your ability to review or have professional judgment. And with that, another shameless promotion for our early adopter program if you're ever interested in learning more and getting to play with this technology before its global launch. And with that, it's a great segue into talking more about what this early adopter program actually is. So if you aren't familiar with it, I highly recommend you consider joining this community where you have programs which run up to our global product releases, giving you the chance to test tools or updates before they roll out widely. It gives you the opportunity to see where the tech is going, give your feedback to influence these roadmaps as well. And so for more information, we'll include a blog we've written recently all about this program. But with that, I have no more news for now, so I will pass it back to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Eve, and really great update on the early adopter program. I think it's One of the questions we get asked about a lot, what's coming, what's new, can we test the functionality out before we go live on our survey? So if you are keen to learn more, then please keep an eye out for that resource that will circulate post-webinar. Okay, so next up, we're going to hand things over to Claudia and Liv, who are going to tell us a little bit more about how to get to know Experience Builder.
Brilliant, thank you. So as Alicia mentioned, the API for JavaScript version 3.x is retiring, which means the apps built using this API are also retiring, and one of those is ArcGIS Web App Builder. So this means that those of you who are using it or have apps built using Web App Builder will need to migrate their apps over to another app builder option, and we'll be showcasing just one of those solutions in this session. But first, let's have a look at the number of different options we've got available. We have ArcGIS Instant Apps, which, as the name suggests, it allows you to quickly configure apps using one of its many templates available. Story Maps is the scrolling page web application where you can really tell a story with your data. ArcGIS Dashboards is for creating that single display of information where you can monitor events, spot trends, and make decisions as well. Report Builder is also another option. It does require additional licensing, but it allows you to generate dynamic reports automatically for every feature within your dataset. And then we've got ArcGIS Experience Builder. So possibly this is the most customizable of the web app builders. And so naturally it does come with a little bit more skilling up required. So choosing the right web app is simply a case of understanding the capabilities that you require. And if it isn't possible in some of the offerings shown here, then Experience Builder might be your answer. So how exactly does it compare with Web App Builder? Well, it also doesn't require any code whatsoever. So it's a simple kind of drag and drop style interface where you can bring in a wide and growing range of widgets. You can even then create your own custom widgets as well with its developer edition. And if you're a lover of a template, Experience Builder has 48 different ones to help get you started. But as well as this, Experience Builder also has so much more to offer, including the ability to design your app for all devices. It follows a draft and publish workflow. You can have multi-page, single-page, fixed or scrolling screen apps. And of course, as I said, it offers extensive customization as well. And that last point is something that I think users are often a little bit intimidated by, and instead maybe they're only needing to harness some of its customization offerings, but ultimately something that you can create an app in little time at all. Well, assuming that none of the other app builder options that I've shown provide what's required, I'm going to show how you can quickly create a web app builder style app configured in Experience Builder. And we're going to do this by following a textbook GIS example where we're creating an app for finding new store locations. And we're going to use the Geolytics retail points that's available in the Living Atlas. Now, the aim of this app is fourfold. We're going to want to view all of the potential locations for a new store on a map. We want to be able to filter those locations by land parcel size. I'd like to understand the distance from competitors. And lastly, I want options for exporting that data. So let's dive straight in. And here we are in Experience Builder. Now I'm going to start by using a template. And there are actually Web App Builder Classic templates now, if you are familiar and you're a lover of Web App Builder. But there's also so many other templates that I'd also recommend exploring. But with this one, I've got a head start with many of the elements already added for me, including these container widgets where it's helping me to manage the screen space as well. Experience Builder also has pre-designed themes, so I can actually avoid any of the kind of design configuration if I want to and just go for something already configured for me. And now let's actually dig into the configuration of this app, starting with this map widget. We're going to go ahead and specify the data we want this widget to show by selecting map and adding the data that we've already configured and that's sitting in our ArcGIS online content. Now, this is a significant difference between the web app builders, where you actually need to specify what data you want each widget to talk to. And you may be sat there thinking that's a bit of a pain. Why have I got to do that for all widgets? But it does open up more opportunities for you. For example, you can link to different data sets, or you can even link to outputs of other widgets, which is a really cool feature. So here we have our map. It's showing all supermarket locations across the UK, as well as all new potential locations shown in these black markers. But I'm actually going to go ahead and toggle off the potential locations, as we'll want to drive that with a widget we'll add in shortly. And I've done that by using the map layers widget that's already added for me. We're going to start adding some more widgets as well now into this sidebar section here, because you can hide it away from the map when required, which is quite a nice feature. But I won't be needing this list widget. So we're going to go ahead and remove that one and instead start adding some of our own, starting with a query widget. As I mentioned, the very first step as soon as you add a widget is we need to specify the data. So this time we're specifying the potential locations that I've just toggled off. And then it's just a case of working our way down this configuration pane. Now here we're going to be filtering the data by attribute, or specifically by land parcel size, like we mentioned in the aims. So I can toggle off the spatial filter, and instead we're going to write a simple SQL expression to set out the query. Now this follows a very similar process or workflow, if you like, for setting up queries across other ArcGIS apps. So again, you should feel familiar with this workflow. For this query, I'm actually going to ask them to input their own values, and I can even add in a hint for the measurement I'd like them to add it in. So that's already the query set up, but ideally I'd actually like the result of this query to display on my map widget. And we can do that by setting up a trigger in our action tab. Now here we can set triggers where widgets can interact with one another. And there's a number of different interactions we can set up here. In this case, we're going to choose records created. The map is my target, and the action is for it to show on a map. And just like that, that's one widget already set up. Next up, and this is a common workflow in Web App Builder, I'd like to know what features are nearby, or in our case, which competitors are near this potential location. So I can add in the newly released Near Me widget that's currently in beta, and again, simply link it to our data, or in this case, our map. Next, we're simply going to dig into the configuration. For example, I can specify the default search distance. Let's go for 2.5 kilometers. And let's add some analysis to this widget. In this case, I'm only interested in knowing nearby existing competitors, so I can specify the Geolytics retail points as my data. I'm only interested in knowing their proximity. And then we can dig into what fields we'd actually like to be displayed in the results. For example, I want to know the store name. And just to make it easy in case there's a lot of results, I can group that by retailer. So that's configured to tell me exactly how many competitors are within a 2.5 kilometer radius of a location that I specify using the tools already within this widget. But what I'd really like for it to do is for my widgets to talk to one another, and instead for the selection in the query widget to be what activates the analysis in the Near Me. So again, we can do this using an action in the query widget. And this time we're going to add a different trigger, and it's going to be record selection changes. You'll now notice the Near Me is an option for our target, and we can specify the action as set location. So let's actually go ahead and save this, jump into the live view, and test this out. Let's say I'm only interested in land parcels greater than 50,000 square feet. We can click apply, and you'll see that those options appear on our map and also within our query. Let's say I'm interested in this new development in Peterborough. You'll notice that not only is it automatically zooming on my map, but it's already carried out this Near Me analysis for me, telling me there's only one competitor within 2.5 kilometers. So this could be a great location for a new store. And then finally, very quickly, the fourth aim of my app is to show how you can export data. Experience Builder makes this really easy for you, and there are a number of different options For example, actually directly in the near me analysis, we can have the option to export those results. This is also available across other widgets in the data actions, and we even have the print widget that you can add directly to apps as another option to export your data. So hopefully that's shown how simple Experience Builder can be for those wanting to harness just some of its capabilities. But of course, Experience Builder offers such an impressive range of customization in terms of design, structure, functionality that I've not been able to touch on here. So I'm now going to hand over to Liv, who's going to give you a little flavor of what's possible with Experience Builder.
Thank you. Today I'm going to show you a fully customized and finished Experience Builder app and talk through some of the design decisions that have been made. Claudia showed how you can use templates to quickly and easily structure the layout of an application. But for this experience, I decided to start with a blank canvas to harness the full flexibility and customization that Experience Builder offers. My experience explores the proportion of students reaching the expected academic level by the end of primary education. The percentage change in the attainment levels between 2019 and 2022 has been mapped alongside the percentage of deprived households to determine how the pandemic may have affected the education of some of the youngest members of our society. The bivariate map conveys the relationship between the attainment change and deprivation, with the filter widget complementing the understanding for those users that may be less familiar with the bivariate mapping technique. The widgets, the list, and the map interact with each other through the configuration of widget actions, which Claudia showcased earlier. As I zoom in on the map, the list updates to show those local authorities within the current map extent. If I select a local authority on the list, the map zooms and pans to that area. A key capability of Experience Builder is the ability to add multiple pages to host extra information instead of trying to squeeze it all onto one page. The attainment levels, broken down by subject, have been configured on a second page. The user can access these via buttons within the sidebar. I have used the section widget to create multiple views or windows within a single page. One has been created for each key academic area using the Views navigation widget. The widget provides interactive access to different views via a menu to avoid scrolling, which is ideal for the app performing well on both mobile and desktop devices. This app structure is perfect if you want to show a similar layout with different content to help the user compare between each view. When you change the view, the section refreshes instead of the entire page, providing a better app performance. Another more subtle customization decision that has been made on these pages is to match the key hex code color from the map to the title and the percentage value in the list to strengthen the link between the different widgets on the screen. Another aspect I wanted to highlight was the ability to view and customize your app on different device layouts, particularly mobiles. Experience Builder allows you to adapt your experience to optimize it for each device layout, allowing you to make the best use of the screen size and provide the best user experience. I've enabled the custom layout option in this app to make a few changes on the smaller mobile screen size. I've chosen to move the list widget into the pending list, which hides the list on the current canvas without removing it altogether from the application. The widget's configuration is saved within the pending list in case you wanted to add it back to the layout at a later date. I've also chosen to move the legend to a retracting section at the bottom of the app to allow my map to be at the center of my application. I hope this is giving you a brief flavor of the customization that Experience Builder offers and how each app you create can be unique to your design and functionality requirements. If you would like to explore this app's functionality further, along with some extra tips and tricks as to how it was made, it is now available to view on the Esri UK Map Gallery page. There are many resources available to help you get to know and build confidence in ArcGIS Experience Builder, from Esri Academy training courses to Esri UK tech blogs, including one to help you step from ArcGIS Web App Builder to Experience Builder, and another focusing on the configuration of triggers and actions to make your apps as dynamic and engaging as possible. All of these resources will be linked in the follow-up email for you to explore in your own time. Thank you for listening, and back to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Liv. Thank you, Claudia. I think it's a really great point you've touched on there with the migration and considering, what app to choose from. It's a journey from your web map, considering instant app templates, if that suffices. If you need a little bit more customization, then considering Experience Builder, and above and beyond that, considering developer options. So it is a journey. If you have questions, of course, please keep them coming, and we'll be more than happy to advise if you need any support. So as we draw today's webinar to a close, the good news is that it won't be long until we're all back together for another session. So if you're keen to hear what's coming on our webinars, on the 16th of August, we'll be running a webinar on exploring web editing capabilities. And at the end of the year, we will be back with the final instalment of the ArcGIS update for winter 2023. What is even better is that this year we'll also be back in person. So if you didn't get a chance to come to the Esri UK annual conference, do not fear. We are hosting the Scottish conference on the 19th of September. Registration is now open, so you can register if you'd like to attend in person on our website. And we'll also be hosting the Esri UK Welsh conference on the 15th of November. More to come on that soon, but do keep an eye out on our website. So all that's left for me to say is just a huge thank you to everybody who's presented today and to all of our attendees. The Slido feedback and poll section will stay live for another couple of hours. So if you do think of any other questions you'd like to pose back to us, or you'd like to upvote, or even give us your feedback on today's session, we'd love to hear it. And make sure you use event code ESRI1807 to get started. So with that, thank you, everybody. I hope you have a lovely afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.